Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another essential conversation here at Wellbeings. We're back with Dr. Alex again, and today we're going to be talking about how to maintain a sort of passionate relationship when you've been in a relationship for a long time. So, Doctor, welcome back in the
thank you, Nigel. Happy to be here.
Yeah, and so let's just hop right in. Like, I'm curious. This is so we're talking about how to maintain passion in a long-standing relationship. Well, let's talk maybe first of all, what's not passion?
Well, this is a very complicated and long conversation, but part of what steals passion is the day-to-day business of running a household, right? Being a householder, being a parent, being a business owner, having a job, all of those things really exhaust us. And while we can have really great companionship with our partner, we lose our partners as lovers because we don't make time for it. And it seems to get marginalized because in the beginning, it's super easy because there's a high level of chemistry and a high level of novelty. And so everybody is just, quite frankly, horny, and it's easy. But as we go along, it becomes more challenging to see that person as a lover, as a sexual being, when you're grousing with them about, bills or taking the trash out or whatever is going on in life, kids that you don't agree on. And that's why it's super important to connect regularly during the week. And people don't do that also. So we just keep marginalizing it. And what happens is people start having mediocre sex or sex that's not worth wanting. And that kind of sex starts to kill desire. It makes sex worse, not better, because everybody is just in an obligatory state or just doing it to get it over with or to get off. And it really kills desire over time.
That's exactly what one of the questions that were asked today. Like she said, this was a woman, she's in her mid-40s, and she turned around, she says, sex for me is like going shopping in the supermarket. She says, it's just something you do, you're unconscious, and you think about it afterwards, and you dread the thought of it.
Right, so why do it? Why do something you dread the thought of? I mean, I can't think of anything I do that I dread the thought of. I mean, I'm not crazy about going to work out, but I do it because I feel so much better afterwards, and it's good for my health and well-being. So I've kind of come to like it, but dreading doing something, I mean, even the thought of doing something, I would say stop doing it, first of all. Don't have sex that's not worth wanting. Because if I was having that kind of sex, I wouldn't want it either. Right? It's like eating, you're going to eat, 5-day leftovers, and it's sort of almost moldy. And you dread the thought of eating it, but you eat it anyway? No.
Yeah, I remember a therapist, an old and a wonderful early therapist of mine. She used to always say, is it enlivening or is it deadening?
Great. Right.
Whatever it is. And you can definitely, and then if it's deadening, then can we start to think about it and be curious about what it is about it that's actually deadening, or what comes in us that feels deadening, I like how you turned around, like why would one pursue something that they don't want to do? And often in her case, she had said it was it's obligatory, I kind of have to do it,
Right.
I kind of this is the role of what a woman's supposed to do, and that just felt deadening right off the bat.
Well, just that statement, there's nothing in that says anything about her pleasure. What brings her pleasure? What turns her on? What does she like? And this is where we really start to deconstruct this thing, because we live in a world where our idea, especially from pornography, is that sex is about performance and it's about penetration. And everybody wants to get to the touchdown or the goal line or scoring. If you even think about the language, that's all sports-oriented language when it comes to sex. But there's nothing in that about connection, about empathy, about curiosity, about exploring pleasure and what is actually pleasurable. And there are many things to do between A and Z, but most people won't take the time to say to their partner, First of all, let's talk about all of our resentments. Let's get that off our chest first. You know, what are the things that bother me about you? What are the things that make me feel not respected or like I don't matter? And to be able to listen to that with an open heart and not get defensive is a big first step for couples, because typically people want to blame and shame each other. And I say, I don't get my needs met. Well, I'm not getting my needs met either. And now we're like 2 8-year-olds, as opposed to tell me where you're not getting your needs met. I want to know more about that. And I'm not going to take that on and make myself a bad person, but I am curious about what I can change and what I can't change. And how can we start to talk about that? That is the beginning of thawing out the ice.
Yeah, yeah. I suppose passion that we're talking about to maintain that spark starts outside the bedroom.
That's right. Because people that, you know, either are entrenched in their arguing are not going to have passion, or people that don't argue are definitely not going to have passion. You have to be willing to tolerate the confrontation and the discomfort in a way that's constructive, not in a way where you're just beating each other up and it's just getting louder and more stuck, and quite frankly, stupid. Instead, it's in a way where we can start to talk about our differences, because everybody is different. Everybody's different. Everybody thinks they married the wrong person. And the longer we're with someone, the more we see, oh my God, we are so different. What was I thinking? Right?
Yeah, and it's a very corrosive position after a while. If it's just, you know, like we start collecting those stamps of resentment. You know, we start like, you know, and then they give us permission to have our tantrums and sort of towards the other, and then there's nothing really it's nothing that's been processed, and it's repetitive. So, you know, as I was thinking about today's sort of journey, you know, so I think you're naming the sort of first sort of steps to start to think about, you know, just trying to get like the sort of I know this is a big subject that we'll weave in and out of over our talks in the future months. But I suppose, what are the key steps towards maintaining that passion in a relationship that at the moment is passionless?
Well, back to what you said about the tantrum and the resentments, underneath that tantrum and those resentments is pain and hurt and loss. And sometimes we feel like we just really miss our partner. We miss our friend. We miss our lover. And we're angry that that person isn't there for us. The anger is a form of connecting. So to be able to be more open-hearted, to sit down and say, I really miss you, and I'm angry that we don't spend more time together. And this is my part in that. I've been really busying myself with the kids, or I've been really busy at work, or I find all these ways, you know, of other things that get my attention. But what I really want to do is take a long walk with you. What I really want to do is spend a couple hours with you on the weekend. How can we make that happen? And now we're an intimate team, as opposed to we're at odds with each other and fighting each other. How do you become an intimate team? How do you stand on the same side and stop blaming your partner and looking more at what your part is in it? Where have you stripped the romance out of your relationship? Where have you stopped playing and doing things that are fun? So this level of communication is probably the most important thing. How do we talk to each other? Am I actually listening to my partner? And am I listening with empathy and curiosity, not because I'm defensive or I want to be right? Because if you want to be right, you're not going to get laid. Let's just put it that way. Right? And if you're willing to be open-hearted and listen, you'll get closer to your goal of connecting.
Mm. Yeah, so you know, like, wow, like I like that intimate team. And another thing that echoes through my conversations in the last few weeks with clients is that there's, and this to the viewers out listening in as well, like there's work involved.
Yes.
To maintain a passionate, enlivening relationship. It doesn't happen. And just because it doesn't happen doesn't mean that it's broken. You know, it means that there's work, you know, that
That's
W-O,
right.
like there's a need for work. And I said, what you're talking about is the work. It's like the curiosity of what's missing, what's not right, what's, you know, why are we boats that pass at nighttime? Like what's...
Yes, and I think that's, you know, sort of the sad thing, and it's an old construct that, you know, we're get married and we're told we'll live happily ever after, as if you become a passive participant in this thing, as opposed to I'm actively shifting and changing, my body's changing. You know, when we're 30s and we have young children, that's very different in our 40s when they're older, or 50s when they launch. And everything's changing all the time, but we don't update our sexual scripts and our experiences with each other. And we don't really know each other sexually as time changes because we don't know ourselves, right? Because the 20-year-old body is different than the, you know, aging body. So this ongoing work is essential. It's like every other thing in your life worth having, you work towards it. You don't just go to the gym and get a great body. You work out and work out and work out, and it can be 6 months, 8 months, and you feel like nothing is happening. And then a year or two in, you're like, whoa, I could see my biceps, or I actually have some ab muscles. How'd that happen? Well, it happened with consistency and discipline and attending to it over and over and over again. That's how anything happens.
Yeah. How much do you want it?
Right.
You know, how much, you know, how can we activate that longing to have that? Where I suppose, Doc, what a lot of people never ever experienced, you know, what we're talking about here is like intimacy as, you know, as part of passion. And I think that's the other part here. It's so far in the idea of to have this enlivening relationship when maybe we were brought up in a family unit where that was just not available, or that we didn't see that modeled, or we don't know anybody where that's actually happening. And, you know, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would suggest that, you know, both parties maybe just sit down and write about what were the messages you got about sex and sexuality growing up, and then compare your notes, right? And when both people have a blank page, it's like, okay, nobody told us anything. It's not our fault that we didn't know what to do. We've done the best we can, but wow, we're really missing a lot here. How do we make this better? How do we start to look at ourselves and share with each other? And these are very difficult and painful conversations, but this is really the starting point into the world of the erotic, where you really start to get to know each other. You really get emotionally naked with each other, and it's awkward and uncomfortable, and it's not hot or suave or any of that, which is what, you know, movies and television sell us. That we're all supposed to be these fantastic lovers when we don't know the first thing about, you know, our bodies sometimes, or what we like, or our partner. So these are the starting points.
I love that. You know, to sit down with one another and to really write what we learned, what we took on to be truths, what we, you know, took on to be sort of the only thing comes to mind is the contaminants of old Dragonian, old style, old school sort of things that are outdated, but they never become outdated until we take a moment to do with them.
And what's weird is often, you know, there's the culture of the family we grow up in, and then the culture of the neighborhood, and the culture of the country, and then the culture of the world. So if you grow up in a family that, let's say, was religious or no longer religious, secular, but it's still repressed because of the previous religious iterations, but then you learn about pornography when you're super young. Right? So you've got this real paradox, and these two messages that are diametrically opposed. One is don't do it, don't talk about it, and the other one is literally in your face. What do you do with that? And that creates a split, because the porn is exciting and it feels good, but then there's all this shame about sex. But I'm not supposed to like this thing that feels so unbelievably good. And I sure don't want to talk about it with my partner, because they're going to think that I'm a slut, or I'm a player, or, I'm a freak of some kind. So we've got all these parts of our sexuality that get compartmentalized and cordoned off, because nowhere is anybody talking about pleasure. Touch, like touch is so unbelievably pleasurable, but that's something that gets skipped over, you know, on the road to performance and penetration. You know, and the sensuality of touch and the sexual charge that touch brings. And the woman that wrote to you, if she could tolerate her partner touching her with consent about where he can and can't touch, and she could just relax into being touched like that, she may have a whole different experience of her body and sensuality. And that becomes a form of sex without it having to be like, it's about, you know, somebody doing something to you while you endure it. That sounds more like a rape, quite honestly. But a self-rape.
Yeah, touch where it doesn't have to go anywhere.
That's right. Well, that's why consent and boundaries are really important in these early stages of touch.
So you're touching each other with allocating time. You're touching each other with being curious about what's really there. How are we feeling resentful? How are we feeling starved? You know, and to really talk about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that during I wouldn't do that during a touch exercise. I think the conversation about where are we feeling starved, what are our resentments, that has to happen. And that's sometimes not one conversation, it's an ongoing conversation. But the touch exercises are really about, you know, allocating time to be touched. And then saying, you can touch me everywhere except my right elbow. And that gives the partner freedom to explore and touch and, you know, examine your partner's body in any way you want, but you cannot touch their right elbow. That's a consent issue, and that creates safety, and it allows the person being touched to relax and not worry that their genitals are going to be groped or their right elbow is going to be touched because that's where they were abused. Right? They can just relax into the touch and trust. It starts to build trust also. And again, these are things that just seem to be like foregone conclusions. Like no one talks about this. It's just about you get married and you're going to have sex and good luck with that. Hope it goes well for you.
Yeah, one of the women who spoke to me, she said before she got married, the priest talked to her about marriage and about intimacy. And that's what she learned. You know, that's what she learned.
Right. And a priest who doesn't have sex is telling you about sex.
Yeah.
And that's a different conversation, I suppose.
Yeah. I remember going to school as a young fella, and the priests were in on the sex education part of it, which seems very strange looking back on it.
Yeah.
So what I meant there, Doc, was at separate intervals, we allow ourselves to, you know, like being touched by being curious about one another, you know, being curious about what's right, what's not right, where we're struggling, what we're holding, separate occasion.
Right.
We move towards the sort of graduation towards having boundaries and what's okay and what's not okay and where we can be touched. And for both people to explore that without having to go somewhere.
That's right. And that can take a long time for people to start to, first it might feel unusual, and then they might start to like it, and then it really becomes enjoyable, and then we start to expand people's capacities for touch. But if you have someone who was sexually abused, or someone who was covertly incested, a woman whose father looked at her inappropriately or said inappropriate things, for her, she's going to get very tense and tight at the thought of being sexual. Or a male who was made fun of because of his belly or his body or his penis in a locker room. All these things really impact us because we embody shame. And so it's about, you know, letting ourselves start to feel, you know, really more free, less shame in our bodies, so that we can start to experience pleasure. And sex should be pleasurable. It should be fun. It should be celebratory. And if it's not, don't do it. If you're dreading it and it's boring, you're just torturing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a moment to go back to step one. Let's explore what's there. And again, at any stage, you go back to step one again in a way where if you encounter something in the moment and you start to freeze or you start to feel overwhelmed as some of the sort of examples you give, Doc, about whether you got shamed as a child or where there was inappropriate touch or objectification, to come back and to really allow yourself to share or at least talk about that experience with the person who's, you may not be able to do it at the beginning, but it's definitely a very helpful, we got to let the other person know what's going on over time. That's
right. And so we want to deconstruct shame. And when we talk to our partners, we want to do it kindly. It would be like if somebody was cooking for you, which is an act of love, and cooking every day, and they started making the same thing day in and day out. And you were like, oh my God, if I eat this one more time, I'm going to die. Instead of saying, I'm sick of this and you've got to stop making this, you might say to your partner, you know, I really appreciate that you put the effort in to feed us every day, and it makes a big difference because I'm not spending money or eating food I don't like. But I got to tell you, eating the same casserole day in and day out is really hard for me. And I want to talk about ways we can get more creative, ways I can help. And that is a way to open space in a conversation, as opposed to the other way of doing it. So you don't want to tell your partner you're sick of the kind of sex you're having and it's horrible. You want to say, I think it's time for us to start to think more creatively and think about what's arousing to both of us so we can have a more exciting sex life. And who wouldn't say, yeah, sure, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'm fed up with the, you know, the sort of spaghetti bolognese. Let's go and try and moussaka. You know, let's try that stuff out.
Right.
I love that analogy. It's okay to talk about it without shaming the other person.
Yeah, right. Because that person's making an effort and they're probably feeling like this isn't so good either. And I don't know how to make it better. And you don't have to figure it out by yourself. And together we can figure it out. Right. That's what I mean about being a team. Instead of, you know, beating each other up or making it your partner's fault that you're having crummy sex. The truth is it's your fault because you're putting up with it.
You're colluding with it.
Yeah, you're tolerating it. So why tolerate something that's not good for you or that you don't like?
Yeah, you know, there's a way in which people default back to, complaining about the dissatisfaction and staying in the dissatisfaction and realizing that they're part of the problem. And what helps the solution is the movement towards communication about it. So communication is a big thing. It just keeps coming around. It's
That's
just
right. It may be the #1 factor because I don't usually teach people how to have sex. Everyone knows how to put their body parts together for the most part. It's not that complicated. There aren't that many sexual positions. What really makes the difference between people that are good lovers and what is called magnificent lovers, which is the title of a book that a researcher from Canada wrote, is this level of exquisite communication, high levels of empathy for their partner, close-in attachment, things that play, laughter, things of that nature is what delineates the average from the extraordinary.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Just for anybody listening, as we're, this is a shorter podcast today, but if anybody's like, just take a moment to pause and think about your relationship. Think about what would happen if there was more communication. Think about what would happen if there was empathy and space and slowing down. What would happen if there was more play? What happened if there was more safety and communication around boundaries of what was okay, what wasn't okay? And if that was happening, what would open up from that? Like, what would be possible for you? I was just feeling into that. This is a sort of, it feels, as we talk about it, Doc, like simple things, but these are things which are forgotten in almost every session I sit with somebody who talks about their struggles. And for me, as a young man, going out into the world of being with women, I didn't know anything about it either.
Right.
Again, I want to talk to the people out there who may feel a little bit awkward about it. I'm talking about it. I'm still learning about it. It's not something you get a Ph.D. and you've got it sorted. It's a lifelong sort of curiosity of exploring it, getting it wrong, and getting back on the horse again and trying again and again.
Yes, well, changing. I mean, I even don't have it right. I had a teacher years ago who said, don't ever let anyone think you're having the best sex in the room, because you're not. You're a person. And it's always a new level of exploration, because we go through phases. If we're in long-term relationships, they go through phases. They shift, they change, because we are changing all the time. And our bodies are changing, as I said. So it is an ongoing process, an ongoing conversation, an ongoing updating, if you will. And there's something so beautiful about being in a long-term relationship where you know someone so deeply and you love them so deeply and closely, and they also drive you crazy like nobody else can. It's all very paradoxical. To find that person, to find the lover in yourself and the lover in that person, and to reconnect in that way is really extraordinary, because then you kind of do have it all. You have the safety and security of somebody who's got your back no matter what. And you have a place where you can explore your erotic self. And I would say your spirituality with someone that you trust. And, you know, sex with a stranger is great, but you don't know that person. And, you know, it can be a great athletic workout or really, you know, a high when it comes to orgasm, but it doesn't have the other components to it. And you can have those components with a long-term partner, the high, the great orgasm, and all of that.
Wow. It's like, you know, and again, at certain stages in your life, if you're not in a long-term relationship, you know, that's definitely something that's very attractive. But again, you know, it's like, you know, when you're in a sort of long-term relationship and you realize that there's work involved, and you realize that to love somebody, at times you're going to hate that person. It's just part of the love deal, you know. And again, like having to work it, having to put work into the relationship, whether it's work into the intimacy or work into, like, really, you know, it's again, it's all under the intimacy umbrella, right? You know, just there's work involved to really, because you name something, yeah, they'll drive you crazy sometimes, but that's just part of it. That doesn't mean that it's a bad relationship, you know, in the best part of things. It just means that's just what we do to each other. Sometimes we rub up against each other. And yeah, it's like, can we explore and talk about how that was? What was missing? What was there that was uncomfortable? You know, it's all about really applying, I think, the things that you've just said for the bedroom everywhere in the relationship, you know?
Yes, because, I mean, that's what it means to be in a family, right? That's part of the deal. We become family. And I think that's one of the challenges also, is how do you separate family again from your lover? You know, the mother of your child is also your lover. The father or the householder that, you know, is working and comes home and is stressed out and can be annoying is also your lover. So where kindness has to be the overarching factor here, and empathy for each other, as opposed to getting shut down, defensive, because that's when all of our family of origin issues come up, as you well know, right? We start enacting or doing what was done to us or what we saw modeled. And it's an opportunity for change. You cannot change fundamentally if you live alone. If you don't want to have any issues, live alone. Get a plant and you'll be fine.
Get a plant, and you know, it comes with its consequences, but it's definitely, you can avoid certain troubles. But yeah, I'm loving that. And we're coming to the end here, this is like a little short snippet, but of a bigger subject, you know, is like on my wedding day, I turned to an older man beside where I was standing, and I asked him, I said, what was important about, like, what has you in your marriage for 40 years? And he says, kindness. Kindness.
Lovely.
Kindness. And it was beautiful. And he was a man who was 70, who was a passionate man. You know, and he was very, very inspiring. And kindness was a part of the distillation of his passion in life and in relationship with his beloved, which he had been in relationship for a long time. So that stood out as like, what a wonderful totem, as I was saying yes to my wife.
It is. And I want to say to everyone that that is an aspiration. We're humans. We're predators by nature. I mean, just look at the violence in the world right now. This is our nature, is to kill. And we're wired for love and we're wired for war. And so this is a tendency that we have to work against. So practicing kindness is a mindfulness practice. It's a spiritual practice. It doesn't just come easy for everybody. We're killers, right? Any given day you want to kill someone in traffic. I mean, it's in our language. So I really appreciate you highlighting that, Nigel, because I think that's maybe a good note for us to end on, is how can we all, myself included, practice kindness today towards the people we love the most?
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, inviting us to be an experiential for anybody who's watching. Just take a moment to pause. Like, what would that look like? Or just taking a moment to think about it. What starts to happen in the body when you think about that atmosphere of kindness? I see it as like an atmosphere that comes from within and touches the people around you. Oh, wow. And that's intimacy right there. You know?
Yeah, it's lovely.
Oh, wow. I'm feeling all kind of bubbly and kind of warm. And I think I'm going to have to go and find my wife for a cuddle after this.
Yes, good.
I don't know about these guys who are watching, but it's a fundamental communication, empathy, touch, kindness, play, laughter, you know, welcoming the other, you know, and talking about that experience. Doc,
what if we ask everyone who's listening right now to either go give their partner a hug or to text them a love emoji and just say, I'm thinking about you. Okay?
Beautiful.
And I'll do it too.
I'm going to physically do it.
Where you can.
But thanks, Doc. Thank you for your heart.
Thank you. All right. See you next time.
Take care. And anybody who's watching, please, you know, hit a like or a share or a comment. We're going to be back around in a month's time again with the doc. So please send in your questions and to any of the links below to Wellbeings and all the lists of if you want more information, Dr. Alex has lots of books. You can check them out in the link and you can get more resources. But thank you for watching. And Doc, thank you again.
All right. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.